Hi, this is Jack Downs with a little run-through of the headline presentation, headline introduction presentation, and there's one that follows this for JOU318 page design on March 5th for anyone not in the class. As I know some of you may not be because of other obligations. So headlines. Headlines are a mysterious thing. They're deceptively simple. I just have to write a informative distillation of the story in just a few words at the top of the story to get attention. It needs to be spelled right, it needs to be grammatical, although the rules for headlines are a little different as far as punctuation and grammar and so on. So that's all there is to it. That's easy to say, but much harder to do. Is it also interesting? Is it clever maybe? Does it match the tone of the story? There's so much more. These are a couple of award-winning headlines. Honestly, I'm always skeptical of award-winning headlines because they fail what we sometimes call the blink test. The blink test is, does it make, when you read the headline, do you understand what you're going to get in the story? And does it make you want to read the story because it tells you, this is what the story is. This is what the story is about. This is what I'll get when I read the story. This is where the story is going. If it doesn't do those things and instead just catches your attention but makes you blink like, what is that? What does that mean? It might be kind of overly clever headlines, written more for other editors or other people in the media than actually for readers to look at and say, oh yeah, I'll read that story. Calligraphers still going against type. If you go against type, you do something that was unexpected. But of course, type is something we write and type, as in print. Calligrapher, we draw letters. Will Red Planet rover send great data over? There's a game, Red Rover Come Over. I think that's what it's called. Children's game. So they combine those things. Red Planet, Red Rover. Yeah, okay. So let's look at some very recent headline winners, headline contest winners. This is in the most recent contest from the American Society of Copy Editors, I believe. Gag Me with a Memoir. Okay. Seeking a license. Expect a traffic jam. I like that one kind of, because it gets the idea that we will be delayed, but it involves cars. So that's a pun headline, but I think it works. It's sass. It's a bit crass, but appeal is mass. Okay. Yes, we're talking about rhyming and alliteration, things that really a little bit of them go a long way, but all right. Illuminate Education, that must be the name of a company, right? Faces lawsuit alleging failure to keep user data in the dark. Illumination in the dark. Yes, good. Okay. Those are some headline winners. I did like that this headline writer, one of the winners, writes that she tests ideas with fellow editors, page designers, and the office manager. She did this with one of her winning headlines, a wry kind of hero. A wry kind of hero. So rye bread, but rye actually has another meaning also, depending like upon personality. A hero is a hero, but it could be a sandwich. Well, it is probably too much, I think. She said she thought it was too much, too weird, but her office mates liked it. I wonder if they really did, or if it passed the blink test, but okay. Anyway, there we go. Those are some discussion there. So, headlines. What headlines need to do? They should be, effective headlines are interesting and informative. Yes. Certainly do not mislead. Okay. Single clear thought. Long headlines can have more than one thought, but usually it's a single clear thought. They should be specific and concrete and direct, not vague, wishy-washy in general. Short, simple words. You need them to be short because you don't have much space. In the active voice. In general, yes, in the active voice. Active, passive. Somebody does something. Active. Something was done to somebody. Passive. Learn the difference between active and passive voice. Appropriate in tone. So, is it a serious story? Is it about the war? Is it a a lighter topic, like maybe sports or a feature? Is it actually a funny story, which is, actually humorous and goofy or silly? Then there's many other possible tones. So the headline needs to match in tone. Is it written for the readers, not your peers, not the person sitting next to you in your newsroom? Is it easy to read? In other words, does it just flow nicely? Is it a distillation of the story? Does it really tell you what the story is about and where it's going? Those are things probably all headlines should be. We'll see in a minute, there's exceptions. But things we don't want to do is, in general, we don't want question headlines. Honestly, I think they should be extremely rare, and they're much more common than they should be. They're too easy. Don't ask us, tell us. Also, they shouldn't just be topics. Like, imagine a headline that just says, discussion about abortion. Well, who discussed? Why? What did they say? So it's just the topic. Don't just give us the topic, tell us what happened. This applies to leads and to headlines. Repetition of the lead. One of the worst crimes in journalism is theft. Theft of the lead. Someone wrote that lead. They spent a long time doing it. You don't steal the lead. You don't use the exactly same words in the exact same way that the lead does. Headlineese, that's kind of artificial language, usually extremely short words that only appear in headlines because they save space. We'll get to that in the presentation or in the next one, maybe. But you can look up lists of headlineese. Forms of the verb to be or to have. We generally don't use is, are, so on. We can skip those. Headlines have a bit of a shorthand feeling, a bit of a telegraph kind of feeling. Those are both kind of old concepts. Telegraphing, even shorthand, although people still use shorthand. But it makes sense when you start to read headlines. To be a good headline writer, you should read a lot of headlines and write a lot of headlines. And like anything else, when you write a headline, don't expect your first one works. In assignments so far in this class, you kind of just fill the space to get done with it. Now things are going to change. I'm going to be looking at headlines to see if they're really good headlines, if they work, on the criteria we're mentioning here. We don't usually use the word and in headlines. We tend to use a comma instead. We don't use the articles the or a. We skip those in headlines. They're more compact. We try to avoid cliches. Cliche headlines are just so sad and so overused. That's why they're cliche. Inappropriate wordplay. So wordplay like puns or plays on people's names or other kinds of wordplay might be okay in the right kind of story, but don't use it for something serious. And they have to really work. Padding, that means just filling out a headline just to have more words there. Why? Because you don't want to bother thinking of another idea or a better way to say it. Unrestrained hyperbole. Everything is huge. Everything is exploding. Everything is war. No. Just to make things interesting, help people go overboard. This is certainly the case in clickbait, which is misleading headlines, which is a whole different category, which we definitely don't want to do. So of those things we said we shouldn't do, there's a couple that you could argue occasionally you do have to do. There are times when a question lead might be okay, but they should be very rare. Longer and duller words might be okay if it is a longer and duller topic, I suppose. And you really have to use the story still, I guess. Passive voice can put the focus where it belongs. In some crime stories, and we'll see an example, a headline, for a lead and a headline, but the passive voice may make more sense. It isn't what somebody did, it's what was done to them, right? The words a and the and is and have, which we usually avoid in forms of is, forms of to be, to have, might be necessary to put back in because of the rhythm or meaning. Some rules we should never violate, though, are it should always be interesting and informative. I would say accurate, too, not misleading. Don't repeat or steal the lead. Never. Avoid inappropriate wordplay. Yes, and therefore use the appropriate tone that matches the story. Those things we should never do. We should never violate. Never say never. How about the or the or is or have? Look at these two headlines. sometimes removing those words does change the meaning a little bit. This is a little hard to get your head around. The word landslide means like in a vote, a landslide is like by a huge margin, right? City voters, okay, urban renewal by landslide, by a landslide vote. So shorthand, we just said, took the A out, and we didn't use the word vote either. We can get away with the word vote maybe, but the word A makes the difference between a landslide thing or the actual landslide. So the helps here. Like landslide, like geographic landslide, like a disaster kind of landslide. How about passive voice? Plattsburgh grand jury indicts Downs. The grand jury is the thing that is doing the thing, is being active in this situation. But that is not the news. The news is that so-and-so was indicted. That's passive voice. Was indicted for something, on charges. Downs indicted on charges he inflated his grades. So sometimes the passive voice is preferred, but it should be rare and you should acknowledge it for a good reason. How to write effective headlines. Here you go. This is all you need to do. Read the story. You know, it's surprising how many people skip that step. You actually have to read the story. Probably the whole story. As you read, get a feel for the tone. Is it happy, sad, silly, goofy, serious, deadly? I don't know. Jot down key words and phrases that apply to the story. This step is more important than ever now. For one thing you need to know is your headline just being used in print? You're writing on a page? Or is that same headline being used online? Hopefully it's not. Those two kinds of headlines are very different things. Headlines written online, everything we've said still applies. But for online headlines, you probably are not quite as restricted in exact size and shape of the headline. That's one thing. You have to assume in online headlines that other things like photos and what type of page it appeared on and stuff is not visible, right? So it has to stand on its own. And often in SEO, in search engine optimization, in search engine results, it literally stands on its own in what the search engine kicks you back. Because the headline could very well be what we consider in web terms the H1, the top level heading, which therefore was probably the thing that the search engine is showing you. So therefore, you have to imagine for online headlines, the keywords that people would be searching to find this story. When they search these words, I want them to find this story. Therefore, I have to put those words in this headline. It's a challenge to do that and not violate the other rules. And you can't jam every keyword into a headline because it might not make any sense. But you're definitely getting your keywords in. But the keywords are useful. Keywords and phrases are useful also just for print headlines. And making a list of them can be useful. So could help you come up with a good head. So it works both ways. But online headlines is more focused on actually using all those keywords. And we should keep a distinction between print headlines and online headlines. Print headlines being that they may be appearing with a photo, which may help to set things in context. Or maybe it's on an international page or something. Or maybe it's in a package with other stories on a certain topic. And all those things add to the context. You don't get that online. So you should base your headline on the keywords and tone. That's it. That's all there is to it. But you have to do all those other things like be accurate and not misleading, informative, distill the story, get attention, be interesting, not steal the lead, blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. So what's the keywords for this story? Take a moment, pause this video, and write them down. What do you think they are? I'll let you read it. Yeah, you do pause the video and do it. I'm going to continue along. How about the words for deaths? Yeah, power, travel, northeast, shovel, snow, storm, snowstorm, all those things. Major snowstorm, maybe, major storm, maybe more. Those are keywords. Which of those are the most important that you have to make sure to get into the headline? If you're doing an online head, you might try to use as many as possible. We won't be able to use as many as possible, depending on how much space you have. We're imagining space, though. Does the headline work? Northeast shoveling out from second big snowfall. Well, it's accurate. That'd be second big snowfall of the season or of the year, which is implied. But is it the most important news? I don't think so. I think it's 4 die in northeast storm. power travel disrupted. And let's look at this headline for another purpose. See how we have two ideas in the headline? That's okay. We have room for it. But if they're not separate sentences, but headlines don't have sentences, but they're fully formed separate ideas, then we can use a semicolon. Colons and semicolons do get used in headlines. Semicolons frequently to separate those separate ideas, but they kind of have to be full-fledged ideas, not just like a word or something. But they're not going to be like an actual grammar where they have to be independent clauses. For die a northeast snowstorm, that is an independent clause. Power travel disrupted, that is pretty much an independent clause, but the clauses are not quite as grammatical as in the text. What are the keywords and phrases for this one? Okay, I'll let you pause it, write them down, and then look what I say, which is I'm just using the ones I came up with. City considering major development based on the words you come up with. Is that the let me just take a look and see. Did I actually write them down in this? Are they just disappearing? No, I did not. Okay. We're going to slide. We're going to no. View. I'm just have to go back here again. Percent review. Oh, it's going to be there. Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. So. Imagine your keywords you came up with. City considering major development. Well, some of those, yes, city, major development. That's true. You're giving yourself a very long work with development, but you may have no choice. But is it the most important stuff? Is it the best of the keywords? How about planned housing complex? Housing complex. I think you need housing in there. Size, alarm, sum, and city, or size of planned housing complex, alarm, sum, and city. If city works for you, city of Plattsburgh, and your place when you say city, does it mean Plattsburgh or Plattsburgh? Plattsburgh's confusing because it's a town and city, though. All right. So what do the AP style books say about headlines? You're supposed to use sentence case. I've been telling you that on your pages, and some of you still aren't getting it. That means you capitalize the first word like a sentence, and you capitalized no other words except for proper nouns. By the way, AP says if a sentence starts with a word, your headline starts with a word that is lowercase, like eBay, the E in eBay is lowercase, capitalize it anyway. But they also say that's kind of stupid. Why don't you rewrite the headline or the sentence to get that word out of there? Yeah. So follow story style and spelling, but use numerals. Use the numbers, the number, not the word, for all numbers. Do you have a choice to use the word or the number? People treat it like that, but you're really supposed to use the number. Use single quotes instead of double quotes for any quotations. You can use, this is not an exception to those rules, but it's exception to some other AP style rules, like the words the abbreviation US, UK, and UN get no periods. And in fact, state abbreviations that are two-letter abbreviations like NY, which in stories we don't use. If you use that in a headline, you don't use periods either. But you do use periods on state abbreviations that are created differently, like GA for Georgia, KY for Kentucky. There's not two capitalized letters. But on the other hand, in stories, we're not supposed to be writing abbreviated states anyway. And AP would prefer if you don't do that in headlines either. When possible, when it works, you should be writing the state out. You can use M for million, like 5M means 5 million. B for billion, but don't use K for thousand, AP says. So that's headline style. So let's go on to the headline stumbles. Headline problems, in other words. Just for fun, I've got a bunch of real headlines that really appeared, and I have some funny errors. How about these? I'll let you read them yourself, because I don't want to read them out loud. But you get the idea. And how about another page of them? Sure. Why not? I really love one-armed man applauds the kindness of strangers. I'm applauding. Fish need water. All right. Okay. Yeah. So, I think I got another page of these. Yes, I do. How about this one? Asian Americans working hard to shatter workaholic stereotype. Maybe that was intentional. I don't know. This whole thing headline will go here, blah, 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 blah. That sort of thing appears more often than you would think, online and on paper. Putting in dummy stuff. At least it's not rude stuff, as appears happens too, and then it's accidentally published. Students expelled after suicide. That's a tough school. And more. Homicide victims rarely talk to police. Yeah. I'll let you read the rest of those. And more. Gosh. These are real. This one here, what's the problem? Man jumps off ferry. We do have to look at like other things on the page and how they might get confused with the thing we're reading the headline on. It is true there's a box around this photo of this kid in pajamas waving goodbye to a ship. But those things are not related. The box makes it appear like they shouldn't be, but some people might say, look, it looks like the kid is waving goodbye to the person who jumped, the man who jumped off the ferry, which is not the case. The Obama one only works when you read it out loud, if you know how to say the other guy's name. And then, I love Rachel Ray finds inspiration in cooking her family and her dog. Punctuation matters. Okay. Finally, this is a real one published in the Press Republican when I was working there every day. I still work there occasionally, but and then there you go. So, what is the point here? A point is headlines need to be edited like anything else. And the best editors, copy editors, have got dirty minds. They can read things and imagine every possible other meaning of them, and also that people could imagine of other meanings for those words that could have bizarre, perhaps, misleading, perhaps, or perhaps embarrassing meanings. So headlines don't. Yes, headlines have to be accurate, correct spelling, correct punctuation with the headline rules. I already looked over the headline do's and don'ts. You don't want to use vague keywords, dull verbs, don't want to ignore the tone of your story. It's quite true. But there's other headline blunders besides just the stupid ones we just saw that aren't quite so obvious. And this is me talking about the blink test. Like if they have multiple meanings, it's like, what? Is that what you meant? Or also they don't work because they're just too clever and therefore hard to figure out. Remember, headlines that we're supposed to be informing people, and communication is what it's all about. We don't want to get in the way of communication. So there's other errors in headlines. Word choice that promotes misunderstanding, bad word plays, cliches, something called splits, which is generally ignored these days, but is an actual thing, headline splits, and headlinees. So, multi-meaning words. Jumping veteran face tough choice. Houston ready for a quick liftoff. Drug dealers go postal. Can you imagine what those stories are about? They actually are real headlines from stories that are about things you wouldn't expect. Jumping veteran was actually about an equestrian. Probably made sense if there was a photo in the story, but still it's two meanings. Like someone riding a horse jumping. Houston ready for quick liftoff was Whitney Houston, and this is a case of a pun of wordplay. Houston as in, Houston, do we have a problem? But no, not that. Like Space Houston, but like Whitney Houston, the performer. Drug dealers going postal. When someone goes postal, that means they go crazy and violent, perhaps. That's an older saying now. Not sure it's still used. He went postal. The idea was like postal workers exploding in violence. Drug dealers going postal. Of course, what this meant was they were sending the drugs through the mail. It only works if it works on both levels. Puns only work when they work on both levels. Multi-meaning words are often used in wordplay. These are probably attempts at wordplay. I don't know about the first one, though. So, wordplay. Peanut butter and a jam locally. I like it. Except the problem was the story was about a salmonella outbreak where people were getting sick because the peanut butter was contaminated. So it really doesn't work for the tone of the story. That one appeared in the Press Republican. It was written by a really good headline writer, but sometimes really good headline writers crave for cleverness more than tone. For purposes, wordplay can mean puns, plays on names, alliteration, rhyming. Those things go a long way. References to popular culture, such as movie lines or song titles. These things all appear in headlines. Other gimmicks. A little bit goes a long way. Overuse can make your paper a sophomoric. You know what sophomoric means? Look it up. Immature, that's what it means. Immature tone. Appropriate wordplay, well executed, is a joy. It really is. It's hard to do, though. Inappropriate wordplay or poorly executed wordplay is a horror. It can be bad. Is the pun in the headline right appropriate? Don't think so. How about this one? 9-year-old girl gets the point. I'll let you read the story. Pause and do it. You're going to see it's not that serious a story, but someone did get hurt, so it's probably not appropriate. How about entering bottled water market? Coca-Cola decides to go flat. In other words, they're not using carbonated water, they're going flat water. It's about the rise in the extra sales of more traditional water, right? But going flat only works if that's a pun, really, right? Because flat has another financial meaning. So if sales were flat, then it would work, but they're not. Sales are going up. So you have a problem there. Oops, wrong way. Wordplay problems. Bandmaster is looking for a few good musicians. The "a few good" cliche phrase is just overused so much. White House shuffle sees Card leaving job. There was a guy named Andy Card. He was White House chief of staff. So plays on people's names, like this next one. Swift is tailor-made for stardom. Okay, these go a long ways. Wordplay of people's names. It's this next one. This would appear. President Obama, setting a precedent. He's president. Okay, so they may make you blink. They may not go with the story you planned, but they work. Wordplays. Here is a joke form from a newspaper, the Raleigh News Observer. The idea was you'd have to fill out this form to get approval for a pun or wordplay headline. I've tested this pun wordplay on my podmate, spouse, pet. The test subject laughed, chuckled, chortled audibly. Not only is this about people trying to be too clever in headlines, it's about being too clever and making up a form too, which is a silly form too, right? But it is the idea that we should probably pause before we use those things. Danger of cliche, right? So using song, movie lines or titles. Some of these are a little older. You could come up with a bunch today that have to do with the movies and songs that you see used as cliches. You know the movie Field of Dreams, which is also "If you build it, they will come." That idea, or Field of Dreams, Field of something. That movie is 30 years old or more, probably. Who knows? But people use that idea in headlines all the time, like the "a few good men" idea, which we saw earlier, which is a recruiting thing from the Army or Marines or something, right? People use those things in headlines all the time and redo them, right? And they're cliches because people use them all the time. So it's not original, it's not subtle, it may become boring, it may not even really work very well. So if you feel the urge to stick "gobble" into a Thanksgiving headline or "ho, ho, ho" into a Christmas headline, please resist. Breaks and splits. It's the same thing, really. They're a problem unique to multi-deck headlines, especially multi-deck headlines that are not really narrow. In a really narrow headline, which is just one word, another word, like 4 words vertically in a very narrow spot on a page, well, there have to be splits. It has to be completely split up, right? We're not talking about that. We're talking about headlines. Perhaps imagine just a 2-deck headline over 3 columns, 36 point or something. That's quite a lot of words. You should be able to arrange them properly and not have them split in a way that is confusing. Each line of the headline should kind of work, right? So, for instance, imagine headlines that start with 2 words. With these first lines: recession racks, project gets green. I think that has to do with like environment or something. South Carolina ginger, like someone who's got ginger color hair, red hair. Husband hung. Oh, I don't know what that's about. Nathan's hot. I don't know what that's about either. Those are the first lines of headlines that actually are breaking the word rack up or racks up. That's a problem. Green light. Breaking these little phrases. Ginger ale. Breaking that is a problem. Hung up. Breaking that's a problem. Hot dog. Breaking that's a problem. and it's misleading. It causes confusion. When our eye gets to the end of the line, it wants to have completed a thought. Also, putting a preposition like of or with at the end of the headline where the word it goes with follows, that is also a bad split or break also. A little hard to avoid maybe, but generally you can. So don't put a preposition at the end of one of the lines of a headline if you can, when the word it links to follows. Of what? With what? And then actual two-word phrases or multi-word phrases, try to avoid breaking them when you headlines. This is not an issue with online headlines. This is only in print. Because online headlines, how it breaks depends on so many other factors, if it breaks at all. Headlinees, these are words we want to avoid because they're just not real. They're real words, but they're not used in your actual speech. We still want headlines to be conversational, like everything else. We do use these words sometimes just because they are short. And this is also a problem with using lots of abbreviations, acronyms and abbreviations, which can turn a headline into alphabet soup, which you want to avoid too. Confab, that's a word. Everybody eyes this. He eyed that. They eyed this. Examine, mull. Examine is okay. Mull is another one. Probe, hit, ink. Ink a pact. Ink means sign or approve. Poll means politician. Solon, another, that's a really, that comes from the Latin, old word for politician. Stump, to campaign is to stump for something, to campaign. Or on the stump means he's campaigning. Dem for Democrat, I'm afraid we do use that a lot. GOP for Republican. We don't use REP for Republican because that's used as an abbreviation for representative, like House of Representatives. Bid, mull, hint, axe, nix. And that's a word, nix. It means to cancel something or not approve something. Pact. Some, a little bit, okay, but just don't overdo it. And don't write clickbait, please. Clickbait headlines are emotional, sensationalized, often misleading. I think they're almost always misleading. It's the 3 things a plumber doesn't want you to know, and on and on. Clickbait is terrible. If you're only writing the headline to get someone to go for your traffic, it's okay to have an interesting headline. Headlines that are deceptive, though, that's the problem. When you get there and the story is only not really about that thing at all, it sort of is, but only in a way that doesn't make sense. All right. Many clickbait headlines now are using like anger and bias to try to get people agitated, or use their worst instincts. Some of those about, and a lot of it is about fake news now too. So I would avoid clickbait completely. Don't click on it, and please don't write it. I want to see some clickbait. Upworthy, this is clickbait. It's true, they're not necessarily nasty stories or that negative stories, but it's still clickbait to say 15 hard truths. People are shocked to learn how one teacher came up with a Gardner Shale revolutionary. What is it about? They're sort of about, but not really telling you what they're about. It's better than most clickbait, but still not that great. So don't write clickbait. Okay, that's the end of the lecture. Went on way long, didn't it? So you've got an assignment to do with headlines. Maybe I should just show it to you. Why not? Oh, I don't have my darn... Where's my bright space? That's not this class. Let's go to our class and let's look at this quickly. 318. Handouts, resources. Make sure to look at the daily schedule. Make sure to see if there's any reading or anything else due. And class resources, and we want the headline keyword exercise. This is due next class. So before the class start class on Tuesday. Is that date right? March 10th? No, it's not. Yes, it is. Wow. Boy, how time flies. So here's a few graphs from 4 stories. For each of these stories, using the headline presentation and our discussion, well, my presentation anyway, and actually the stuff about headlines in your textbook, type up keywords. So how many keywords? 5, 6, 7, something like that. First, I want to see a list of keywords. Then I want you to type a headline. Your headline guidelines are liberal, 6 to 10 words. So you're pretty flexible. You ought to be able to do a headline in 10 words. In your copy, note, so say story 1, write the keywords, write the headline. Story 2, and so on. But they got to be good. They got to really work. And here's the stories: 1, 2, 3, 4. So write 4 headlines and 4 groups of keywords. That's all there is to it. All right, that's it for today. See you in class next time.